Hey Townview Music! Today we are going to talk about a huge topic in music, and that is the introduction of chords. The crux of harmony. So much of our music is identified by what the chords are doing and how the chords work and how they interact with each other. So we're going to take this in a few different pieces, starting with what are chords? Chords are essentially just collections of intervals. Intervals would have two different pitches, and chords typically have more than two pitches. The fundamental part of chords that we're going to be talking about today are triads. Triads are three-note chords. Now, like I said, chords can be more than two notes. So you have chords with 4 or 5 or 6 notes if you're really kind of crazy. But the core identity for chords is 3 different pitches. So let's look at treble clef right here. And we're going to look at our good old-fashioned C major chord. Okay? So this is C, E, and G. We're going to look at a few different intervals here. The first is from the bottom note to the middle. We call this the root of the chord, and we refer to the middle as the third of the chord because it's a third above the root. So this bottom interval is a, tell me, major third. Now let's look at this top interval. This is between the third of the chord and the top note of the chord, which is a fifth away from the root. So that'll be from the third to the fifth, and that's also a third interval. And what kind of interval is that? That one is a minor third. So we're looking at a major third on bottom, a minor third on top, and if we analyze this outside interval, we have from C to G, the first note in the C scale to the fifth note in the C scale, also the first to the fifth of the chord, and that's a perfect fifth. So we analyze all these different pieces in the chord. This gives us a distinct identity for this chord. If a chord has a major third on the bottom and a minor third on top, or another way to think of it is a major third on bottom and a perfect fifth going from the bottom to the top, this type of chord or this type of triad is a major chord or a major triad. This specific one is built on C. C is the root of this chord, and the root is what gives the chord its name. So this is a C major triad. We just do capital C and major. So if we look at that any other chord that's built on any other letter, and it contains a major third on bottom, minor third on top, which will produce a perfect fifth on the outside. Any other note, that's going to be a major chord. So if it's built on A flat, it'll be an A flat major chord. Or if it's built on D, it'll be a D major chord. That is the set of qualities that it takes to produce a major chord. But major chords aren't the only kinds of chords there are. What if I take that same chord and instead I put a flat on the middle note? So now it's C, E flat, and G. So we have our root, third, and fifth are the 3 parts of the chord. From our root to our third, this interval is not the major third we had before. It's a half step smaller. And so this is going to be a minor third. This E flat to G, from our third to our fifth, got bigger when the E flat was flatted. So instead of being a minor third, this one is now a major third. So we flip-flopped those intervals. When we took the chord and we lowered the middle note, we decreased this interval and increased that interval. But the outside interval stayed exactly the same. Well, it was perfect. It didn't really need to change anything, did it? So this has a major third, a minor third, and a perfect fifth. That's our major chord. This flips it around, has a minor third, a major third, and a perfect fifth. This interval on the bottom is a minor third, and that interval gives the chord its name. It's a C minor chord. In this case, the major interval on the bottom meant that the chord is major. In this case, the minor interval on the bottom meant that the chord is minor. Well, we can build more chords this way. What if we had C, E, G sharp. So instead of changing the middle note, we change the top note. Well, we know C to E is still a major third. And now we have E to G sharp. Well, E to G was a minor third, and now we've sharped the G, so we've increased the chord. This becomes a major third as well. So that means our outside interval is also different because we increased the top note. So C to G was a perfect fifth. C to G sharp is a half step larger than a perfect fifth. And what happens when we increase the size of a perfect interval? It becomes an augmented interval. So the outside interval here is an A5, augmented fifth. So we can't call this a major chord because even though it has a major third at the bottom, the term major chord has already been taken. We can't use it again to describe something that is not the same. So we have to name this one not by the bottom interval, but by the outside interval. This becomes C augmented. And it's written with a capital just like major was because it's a major third there. One more type. What if instead of just changing the middle note here, we changed both the middle note and the top note to where now they're both flats? Well, we saw in this one that the C to the E flat produce a minor third. And here we have E flat to G flat. Well, as a nice little trick, E to G was a minor third. And if I lower both of them the same distance, it's the same interval. So E flat to G flat is also a minor third. Can I call this chord a minor chord? I can't, because this is a minor chord and it has a different interval structure. So instead of naming it based on the bottom interval here, I name it based on the outside interval here. It's not C to G like I had over here or here. That was a perfect fifth. It's been decreased, C to G flat. What happens when I decrease a perfect interval? Well, I get a diminished interval, D5, written with a lowercase d. And this chord is a C diminished. Again, named by the outside interval in the chord. So let's take just a moment and look at what each of these chords produces. Our C major chord, bright, happy, joyful, exuberant. This is so much of our music centered around major chords and this major tonality. Well, if we take that middle note and we lower it a half step, now we have a C minor chord. It's dark and brooding and mysterious, right? It can be sad or it can be scary depending on how we characterize that chord. Well, now we have the augmented chord. Before we saw a major third and a minor third produced a major chord. With the augmented chord, now we have two major thirds. So if the C major chord was happy, the C augmented chord has even more major intervals in it. It should be really happy, right? Doesn't that sound? No, that sounds terrible, doesn't it? Yeah, too much of a good thing, right? So we have C major. C augmented takes that idea and twists it and corrupts it and makes it very, very dissonant, very scary. Someone's about to get murdered in the woods. Okay, so that's our augmented chord. And then let's do the flip side and look at our minor chord, C minor. Dark, brooding, mysterious. If we flat that G, now we get, ooh, even more mysterious, even more brooding. Like something suspenseful is about to happen, but you're not sure what. Maybe it's this. Or maybe it's this. And we don't know. There's a lot of suspense to that chord. There's a lot of pull towards something else. So they all have a distinct, unique function to them. Again, C major, we've got a major third, a minor third. Perfect fifth. There's our C major. Now our C minor, we've got a minor third and a major third. Perfect fifth. C augmented, we've got a major third. We've got another major third. Augmented fifth. And C diminished, we've got a minor third and another minor third. Diminished fifth for a diminished triad. The vast majority of all songs ever written is comprised of these 4 different kinds of chords. So when we're looking at each one, we just want to analyze the bottom to the middle and the bottom to the top. And as a system, you can use the same idea that you did when you were analyzing intervals. In the key of the bottom note, what is the top note? Except now there's 2 top notes, but the good news is it's the same process that you did before. In the key of C, what are those 2 notes? And if it lines up with major, it's major. And if it lines up with minor, it's minor. And if it doesn't line up with either of them, then figure out what the rest of the chord is, because the augmented will still line up with major on the bottom. And the diminished will still line up with minor on the bottom. And then you'll just have to look at the top note being a half step different from the regular pitch for the regular key. Using that system can help you build and identify triads. And if you have triads down, then so much more music theory will really come out.